Hello and welcome to GREENFLEET Talks. My name's Kate Armitage and I'm your host for our discussion today. And I'm delighted to be joined by Sean Maher, Sales Director at Quartix. Hi, Sean.
How are you? Are you well?
I'm very well, thank you. Good to speak to you again. It's been a while.
Yes, absolutely.
Sean, our focus for today is removing barriers in the transition to electric. And we're going to be discussing Quartix's new Evolve service. So let's start at the beginning. Many organisations don't have a net zero transition plan for their fleet. Where would you advise that they start?
Okay, we sit in front of many customers, and pretty much every customer we sit in front of now knows that there's a requirement for them to move to EV. Typically, when we ask the question of what are you doing, most fleet managers put their head in their hands and say, look, we really don't know where to start. But the obvious point is that they do. If they're utilising a vehicle tracking system like ourselves, then we have so much data that allows them to understand the suitability of vehicles to be able to move to EV. So we launched Evolve back in the summer on the premise that we can provide real clear data that is independent, that gives a real understanding of what their vehicle fleet is doing, where it's operating, how it's operating, and in essence, from there, being able to understand if a vehicle that is currently operating as a diesel or petrol can have that transition to electric with ease. And more importantly, we're giving them information they know they can trust and rely upon, because that information is coming live from their own vehicle. And off the back of that, we launched Evolve to help people make that informed decision based off information that they already have and they know and they can trust, because they recognise the data that's coming through is genuine and accurate.
Great, and I said that's all good and well if you are one of the fleets in the UK that has telematics data and is working with yourselves. And data is key, but there is still a reluctance amongst organisations, and I'm thinking possibly about smaller to medium-sized organisations, to adopt telematics.
Correct.
Just broadly, what are their concerns about that, and what advice would you give them?
Okay, so I mean, there is a decent sized percentage of organisations operating in the UK that do not use telematics. They've made that decision; they don't want to do so, which we fully respect. However, in order for you to make a transition, you do need data, and I understand that when we speak to customers that aren't that keen to move to a full telematics environment, typically they feel that it's the spy in the cab, it's keeping an eye on the drivers. Their drivers will feel uncomfortable by being tracked. The advantage of Evolve is we can provide them with the data that they need to make the transition without all of the data that typically a customer would use from telematics. So we basically switch off all of the where are they, where have they been, how are they driving scenarios. So the typical information you get from telematics to make your fleet more efficient and effective, but we leave them with the core data that says, look, out of your vehicle fleet, you've got a fleet of 50. We can see from the information that we're getting that an average trip is, for example, say 20 miles. They're operating in an environment where there is a decent charging network, and all of that information could be provided to them without them having to adopt a full telematics system. They can easily take a unit from us that they can just simply plug in, leave it in the vehicle for a particular period of time, typically 12 months, but only use that data to help them make the transition. So when they're selling that to their workforce, this isn't a fully fledged, fully blown telematics system that is watching the driver all of the time, showing them where they've been, and as I say, identifying, risk profiles, etc. They can have all of that bit switched off, but use the core data to say, now we can make an informed decision that says these vehicles here can transition purely and simply because we understand the journeys that they're traveling and the area that they're traveling in. And we feel that is a real advantage to customers that don't necessarily want to take the full-blown telematics approach, but know they need to move and transition to EV in line with government requirements.
I understand, and I appreciate it can be a bit of a tough sell. I mean, I would say to run the Evolve service, you need the data for 12 months, but I would say hopefully many of those fleets will realize the value of that and keep that data coming through beyond those 12 months, because you need to also see that what you expected would happen is happening. Otherwise, you haven't got that control element within your fleet.
And I think as well, also, when people start to see the data that's coming through, the fear factor of what telematics potentially might do to the workforce disappears, because telematics is all about improvement. It's all about understanding that vehicles are being utilised correctly, they're being driven safely, and they're compliant. And I think, in essence, what we're almost doing is giving them a very small taster of what telematics can do to open the door, to potentially open up the full service that's on offer. But we appreciate there has to be a start point. And for a lot of customers, that start point is, how do I move to electric from my current ICE vehicle? And we think this is the ideal route without the big introduction of a fully blown telematic system. I think people will organically grow with it, thinking, well, wow, if it can do this for me, as you've rightly said, what else can it bring to the table to be more efficient and effective? So yeah, we think that's a really good introduction to telematics.
Yeah, and it cuts out the controversy, so you get the value without the controversy. You mentioned, Sean, that part of this service is understanding how the vehicle, if you were to move to electric, would interact with charging infrastructure. We have seen, for those of us who have been around for a long time, battery range, it has certainly increased, and is at the moment is continued to increase. So I think these days the emphasis is less on what used to be called range anxiety, and is much more about the charging infrastructure and the ability of the infrastructure to meet their needs, and the ease and convenience of charging. So how do you help fleets with that?
Okay, so the most important point is the system that we operate, it pulls data from lots of different sources. So we're looking and able to provide, almost updating daily, what the charging infrastructure looks like in a particular area. So for example, if we identify that a vehicle can be transitioned to EV, the first thing we do is we let the customer know what the public charge point is like in areas where that vehicle would operate. So typically, we're able to also identify the times of day when a vehicle is available to be charged. So for example, if you've got a vehicle that is operating on site and it's on site all day, we would be able to identify that within a certain radius of that site, there is an existing public charge point. We would also identify where potentially overnight there may not be the public infrastructure, and we would recommend that that's where the business would need to obtain and purchase a new charge point for home or for the office. But basically, we're able to say this vehicle operates in this area of the country. Within that range, there are X amount of charge points. So before you go out and start spending money on buying them into your office or bringing them into the home addresses, we're able to give you that overview of what is available in that particular area. And as I say, this is a live interactive map. So as the charge points get better and better, then obviously the information allows the customer to make those informed decisions. And the advantage for us on Evolve is that the customer can run this as often as they want. This isn't a one-hit charge. You don't just say, right, we're running it today, that's it, there's all your information. The customer can run this as often as they want to, in line with their own requirement, and in line, as we said, with, for example, a 12-month window. Typically, we suggest people run it every 3 months, because again, you'll have different seasonal changes to potentially to business. But the beauty is that charging infrastructure is growing on our system in line with how it's growing across the UK charge network. And I think typically now, if you look at 2016, I think there were around 5,000 charge points. As of now, there's just over 30,000. So you can see it's changing dramatically.
Yeah. And that's devices. There's more connectors than that as well. So lots to take on board there, Sean. So I really like the we recommend that you run it every 3 months, because there's definitely, with the vehicle range and choice changing, improving, and the amount of charge points going in, what didn't work 3 months ago may suddenly become viable. And we're seeing, it feels to me anyway, so many rapid and high powered charging hubs opening, which is probably where business fleets, that's what they're going to be targeting. To say that there's a 7 kilowatt charger in your local Tesco's probably isn't that helpful, but
no, indeed.
Yeah. Okay, so we've talked about the charging infrastructure. We talked about the refreshing Evolve on a regular basis. I just want to turn our attention to the problem, not problem, but vans. So everyone's talking about vans at the moment. And of course, this is a huge part of business fleets. So the latest data from New Automotive revealed that electric vans accounted for 5% of all van registrations in July. And disappointingly, diesel still makes up 93%. So there are clearly still challenges with switching across to electric vans. What's your understanding of the dynamic of that? And again, you know, what can you do to help that?
Okay, yeah, I mean, you rightly say there are more diesel vehicles coming into the market, albeit I think there's still the same waiting time for those now as there is an electric vehicle. The major advantage of the Evolve product is that we're completely independent. So our product, we quite frankly don't guide the customer down any particular manufacturer route. What we will say, for example, is if that customer was operating van brand X today, and they were looking to make that transition to EV, we will find the nearest type vehicle and payload to that current vehicle. And we will give them the option from a total cost of ownership as to which is the cheapest on the market based on the information that we've got for range and for payload. However, that isn't set in stone. If the customer has a certain preference that says, I don't want to use that brand, I want to use this brand, the Evolve product gives them a drop-down menu that allows them to pick and choose the vehicles that they want. It also means that if they're speaking with their leasing provider and their leasing provider says, look, actually, we've got the ability to get our hands on an electric vehicle, that this vehicle may not have been something that they were thinking of at that particular time, but they can then choose it from the list and actually work out, okay, does this meet the standard? Has it got the range I want? Has it got the payload that I need? And also, more importantly, in relation to the cost that's now been provided by the leasing provider, they can calculate through the Evolve system the total cost of ownership, so they can compare that to their current diesel fleet. Obviously, the other advantage, of course, is that while they're waiting for this to happen and the market and the vehicles to come online, they've got the ability to keep reviewing that information, as we said, to still make sure that the vehicle that they were thinking of is still the right one. Something else may come onto the market, which again we would be aware of. But for us, we think it's really, really advantageous that we're not shoehorning them down one particular route of make and model. They have the ability to review every single EV vehicle that's applicable to the vehicle type that they have at this moment in time, and allow to make that calculation.
And Sean, that's so important. I mean, I don't think I'm exaggerating, but 8 years ago, you really only had a choice of 2 or 3 vans.
Yes.
But now the range is so much wider, and we're starting to see some of the startup brands working with the leasing companies to come to market as well. So, to have that all in one place, to have that breadth and depth of vehicle choice, I think is critical. Great. So Sean, I'm gonna finish with let's gaze into the future. How will IT, technology, and data evolve to help fleet operations?
Well, I think without any doubt, data is king. Without data, we're almost doing that as to which way round do we go. We are in an environment now where most people are in a situation where they have data coming through from different formats, whether it be coming from telematics, whether it be coming through their fuel card data, through their fleet management providers. I genuinely think that the information that is available to customers, if they have the right lead on which way to go with this information, they can make very quick, informed decisions around what is the right route for them to take, but also have the peace of mind of knowing that that is data that is applicable to them and their business. It's not random data that's sort of being thrown at them. This is information that they have. They can hold on to it, they can understand it, and more importantly, they can trust it. And I think that's really where the future is going around this transition piece, in that people can make the informed decision with information that they have available to them, that they know is applicable to them and them alone, and they can make those informed decisions moving forward to make that transition across.
So much more personalised,
Yes.
not generic assumptions about each vehicle and.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's vitally important that you need to make a decision about the future of your business, and there are lots of people that will tell you what they think is right for your business. But I think if you've got information that is in front of you that's real, you know it, you've trusted it, you've used it for a very, very long time, and now you're using it in a new way to help you make that transition. I think that's really, really important. And I think as well it helps with brand reputation. If you're a business out there and you're showing that you are looking to make that move to electric, it's showing that you firmly believe that the EV solution is the right way to go. And I think more and more customers who are working with brands want to ensure that they have got that commitment to a net zero plan. And I think we're helping people make that transition across, and giving them the ability to show their customer base that they're doing everything they can to move their vehicles to net zero. So I think it's a really, really exciting time for the market and for us as a business, and helping people make that transition to net zero.
Well, Sean, I agree. And the more fleets that Evolve can encourage to switch across to zero emission vehicles, the better, as far as I'm concerned.
Totally agree. Totally agree.
Sean, it has been a pleasure talking to you. I'm afraid that's all we've got time for. I would like to say thank you to Quartix for joining GREENFLEET Talks.
Thank you very much, Kate. It's great to be invited back. Thank you for your time.